Hey gang, have you ever wondered, God, are you out there? Or to put it another way, have you ever wished God wasn't so seemingly silent in your life? That you could just sort of sit across the table from God and go through that list of questions you've always wanted to ask God. God, why did you design my back the way you did? God, explain aardvarks and sloths. God, where's Elvis, really? And what about Stonehenge? Better yet, why poverty? Why don't you put an end to wars? God, why all the hurts and pains? We'd love to sit across the table from God and just fire away, wouldn't we? Because the truth is, this side of the cross, sometimes God feels all too absent, and we have a lot of questions. If this is true for you, join me here as we take a look at 4 little verses in the book of Romans that just might give us a little perspective. Folks, I have a dear friend whose husband died tragically many years ago. His death left her a single mother of 3 adorable children who are now all grown adults. I know life was lonely for her as a single mom. She managed her family, the house, budgets, and schedules all alone. She shuttled kids to and from school alone. She cooked meals, went on college visits, put on all the graduation parties. She planned weddings. It's all the stuff that God created us to do with a spouse, together. And yet this friend of mine, she did it all alone. And for years, this friend of mine wondered, is there someone out there for me? A new companion? Do you suppose God has another someone I could share my life with? Is God going to give me a second chance? Now, ever since I met her, she'd regularly say to me, I just wish God would give me a sign. Well, lo and behold, after years of wondering and after God's perceived silence and resigning herself to the fact that she was meant to be alone, when she'd given up searching, when she least expected it, a new friend recently walked into her life, a new companion, someone she certainly didn't expect and wasn't at all looking for anymore. All of a sudden, God swooped her up and was writing a new story in her life. In the last 4 verses of Romans chapter 9, Paul is recalling how the Gentiles, like my friend, are being swept up in a new story. A story God was writing in Jesus, a story that those Gentiles, those outsiders to the faith, were not even looking for. Romans chapter 9, verse 30 reads, "What then shall we say? That the Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have obtained it, a righteousness that is by faith." What's Paul saying? The Gentiles, they weren't looking for it. They'd resigned themselves to the belief that they were outside the bounds of God's love. God had been seemingly silent to the Gentiles forever. They believed they were outsiders. God didn't want anything to do with them. They were rejects. Yet, when they weren't looking for it, God opened the door. God made a way where there was no way. God wrote a new story that included them. You see, friends, often it's difficult to see the hand of God at work, isn't it? I mean, seriously, amid the sort of obscurity of all we experience from day to day, often God's good news, it feels hidden. We just wish sometimes, don't we, that God would appear and we could say, God, help me understand. You see, for Paul, his big question for God was, God, I just don't get it. Help me understand why my people, the Israelites, why would they reject the Gentiles? Why would they reject Jesus? God, what are you doing about that problem? Paul's response? Just believe. Just have faith. God is faithful. He says, the one who believes in him will never be put to shame. Know that even when you can't see him, God's working. Yes, God seems hidden. Yet never forget, Paul says, that God revealed himself in human history in the greatest event of all time, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, who was the fulfillment of what God's people had wondered about for hundreds and hundreds of years. They'd been waiting. And if God fulfilled their wonderings, well, folks, this God will certainly do the same for you and for me. A couple of questions for you. When has God seemed most silent in your life? And secondly, what comfort does it bring you to know that even when you can't see it, God's working in your life? What do you imagine? How do you imagine God is working in your life? And what is God working on in your life today? Thanks for tuning in, gang.